when I drink wine, I'm either really in a trashy mode or really classy. There's really no in between for me.
I have to be honest with you guys. The more the more I go into this industry, the trashier I get. I mean, I don't even care anymore, man. Just like pour it in a Dixie pour it in a solo cup. I just don't care. I mean, but at least I have like some back knowledge.
Yeah, go to your local pub and order a glass of white wine and slurp it around and see what happens.
I'm going to stand at the bar and hold it up like this over my head at the bar and go, yes, yes.
But, like, we're doing this for fun, and I've drank $100 Bordeaux out of a jelly jar with no food. Also,
Alycia, I think that quote right there is going to be at the top of the episode as our lead-in.
Yeah, we always have a lead-in, and that might be it.
That's the clip.
Welcome to the Thunk Tank. Come in the tank. We're thinking, and we're drinking,
And we're thunked.
Oh my god, I'm probably more beer than man if we go far enough back at this point.
Save it for the cast.
Oh yeah.
Oh, well, this is the cast.
This is it. We're starting.
All right,
Yeah.
Thunk Tank has started.
All right, we're warmed up.
All right. Welcome to the cast, Alycia. Why don't you introduce yourself to all the thunkers?
Thank you. My name is Alycia Bonsamino, and I am a level 2 sommelier in the sommelier world. That is not a sommelier whatsoever, and I do not tell most people that I'm a sommelier, except for my family, because they tell all their friends that I am, and it's not really true. But I do work for a wine and spirits wholesaler, and I taste... Well, before COVID-19, when we were having meetings, I probably taste around 70 different wines a week, 70 to, probably 70 wines, 70 different wines a week.
That's a lot of wines.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's more than the number of glasses of water I have every week.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Is that
tasting.
good or bad?
It just is.
Okay.
It's not anything.
You spit it out, I assume, right?
Yeah, we spit it out, unless it's
Really good.
Unless it's really good, yeah.
Then you chug.
Exactly.
Isn't there a point in your day where you're like, well, it's kind of like 4:30, we're going to actually have a glass?
Well, so the way that my day goes, so I work for a wholesaler, and so we sell fine wine and craft spirits to local restaurants in Connecticut and liquor stores. So my role is to help restaurants create their wine lists, which is probably the most fun part of my job because I get to taste a lot of really cool wines that way. I take inventory for the liquor stores and taste them on new products as well for them to bring new products in. But yes, my last account of the day usually concludes with me drinking like a Miller High Life with one of my customers in the parking lot.
Nice.
Classy. I like it.
Selling wine all day, drinking Miller High Life in the parking lot at night.
Like a true superhero.
Or like a 100 proof nippers of Smirnoff root beer flavored vodka.
Ooh, how's that?
It is so bad, but it gets the job done.
Fair enough. It's not to be expected.
Is wine your favorite drink of choice? Like,
Yeah, why wine? Why not craft beer or cocktail? I guess
Oh,
you said
Johnny
cocktails
Anglin.
too, but
Anglin for a battle.
no.
I think that my love affair with wine I know that it began at a very young age, and a lot of people say that. Since I've been in the wholesale industry, because I'm around it so much, it's kind of teetered off a little bit. And usually when I'm home, I don't drink a lot of wine, unless we get something super, super cool and geeky in. So is wine my drink of choice? It was at one point in my life, and it is if it's really good, but it's got to be worth it for me to crack open a bottle, because I'm not just going to have a glass of wine. Like when you open the bottle, you have to finish that bottle,
you never recork it for like the next night or for a couple of days?
I don't know. I mean, if my husband and I are sharing the bottle, it usually would never last that long anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's a fair point. But sometimes like I'll have one glass of wine with a meal,
and then my fiance will have one, and then it'll still be half full, and we'll do the same thing the next night.
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, there's no problem in that.
And sometimes it tastes better the next day. I've found like it, or at least it changes in its taste.
Sometimes it definitely tastes better the next day, and that all depends on the wine and your preference of what better is. I mean, I don't think better or best or any of those words are like. I mean, it's such a subjective topic, as with beer, that I don't know. I'm fascinated.
No, you finish.
I'm fascinated. The one thing that I am still fascinated with wine is the agricultural part of it. If I were to ever, really go for it, if I had like unlimited resources and in like the absolute perfect world, I would love to own a vineyard and not be a winemaker, but sell fruit and sell juice to other people. That's what I'm most interested in. I'm most interested in the farmer.
The viticulture of it
I'm most
all?
interested in the viticulture, yeah.
And that's the difference between a vineyard and a winery, correct?
So a winery is where you make the wine, and then a vineyard is where it's grown. So a vineyard is the physical place where the grapes start to grow, yeah.
A yard of vines.
Exactly.
Makes sense. I don't know if I've ever actually thought about it.
A murder of
before.
crows.
I want to go back to something you said a little bit before about people's love of wine blooming. Does that mean that European sommeliers have sort of a leg up on sommeliers from the U.S. because they legally can start drinking at 18, most of them, or even younger? Whereas, I'm sure that there are undergrad studies, like you did, but how does that work?
The most famous sommeliers in the world are from America. And I think it's because, these people have a lot of money and they were able to travel the world, they were able to do it. So without traveling the world, there's no way that anyone could really achieve the title of Master Sommelier or Master of Wine. And any of them will tell you that. I mean, there's not many people in the world that have those titles. And it's because it's expensive to do, traveling the world. And usually vineyards will put you up, but who's paying for your travel? The Society of Wine Educators is not paying for your travel. The Wine Spirits Education Trust is not paying for your travels. I mean, you're paying them a lot of money to get these certificates, and it's up to you to do the homework.
And who's paying for your time to devote all those years to study that and become a master?
Yeah, so, I started my career working for a winery and a vineyard on Long Island called Shin Estate Vineyards, which is still there, and I have a lot of respect for them. I decided around that time that I no longer wanted to work in restaurants, and a sommelier job is someone in restaurants who helps the guests choose wines. It just wasn't conducive to my lifestyle any longer, where it once was, working in restaurants. So I kind of put a pause on my education. And when I, had graduated college, I was like...
With a degree in...
With a degree that was very expensive. And I was, in my second level Wine Spirits Education Trust sommelier courses that I was taking in Manhattan. I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know about anything else. And thankfully, there is a career out there for people who want to work with wine every day and also want to enjoy their nights and weekends and holidays. And it's distribution. And it's becoming a little bit more popular for people to leave the restaurants and get into distribution. I feel lucky that I was able to get into it when I did, because it started to get really competitive.
People realize that's a dope way to have your nights free and still be in the biz.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's really cool. And I work for a really great company.
So I have a question about sommeliers. I want to go back real quick before we move on. And I'm going to compare a lot of stuff erroneously to craft beer because that's my world and my point of reference.
Okay.
But like, at least in American beer culture, like, we used to be considered the shittiest beer in the world up to like even 20, 30, 40 years ago. But because we don't have like a traditional like a heirloom brewing tradition that goes back hundreds and thousands of years, like some places do. Like it was easier for us to like reinvent and come up with new trends and stuff. So like craft beer now in America is copied in other places. Yeah. So I wonder if, because like a French sommelier, would they grow up with a very French centric like take on wine, or maybe even like I don't know what the word is. It's not French superiority, but the idea that like an inherent bias as opposed to America, where it's like, oh, try everything. Is there any of that in the wine world? Like regional, I don't know what the term is.
Bias, yeah.
Bias,
Yeah, regional bias.
I don't think that there would be regional bias in the sommelier world because, you know, if there are 10 people, you know, taking their final, master sommelier exam in Texas, and, you know, 3 of them are from France and 2 of them are from Italy and the rest of them are from the United States, they've all had to have the same experiences. You know, they've had to have the same experiences with wines from around the world. So I don't think that there's a cultural bias in the sommelier world just because they have to taste the same wines.
It probably cancels out. Yeah, they taste everything.
Yeah, they're taking the same exam and all that. I do think there might be some cultural bias when it comes to farming, though, because everyone thinks that their winery and their vineyard is the best one. And they have to do that because sales and marketing. And I mean,
it's like every city's orchestra has the most special orchestra. It's like, really?
No one's going to say
not all of you could be right.
Yeah, no one's going to say their wine is middling, but worth the price. You can't really put that on the label.
Right.
So I asked because I saw a movie with Alan Rickman about wine that I really love. I don't know if you've seen it, called Bottle Shock.
Yes, of course.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
I thought it was a great movie, but it's all about this. I think he's English. This English wine guy who opens up a shop in France, and no one takes him seriously. And then he like starts discovering really good American California wines before they were considered good. I guess it was like the 70s. And he sets up a blind taste testing between American and French wines, and like all the best like French sommeliers, and they all blindly choose the American one and say, oh, this must be the French one. This is like a perfect example of a French wine. Like, no, you gave it to, you know, whoever it was, Kurt Russell or whoever played the American vineyard owner. Is that real, or is that just totally made up?
No, that really happened. It's the Paris tasting of 1982 or 1978, something like 1979. I don't know.
The old
like
Paris tasting of 1978.
Oh, that was my favorite. Yeah.
One of my favorite
that really
tastings.
Is that really when things kind of turned around for American winemaking?
Absolutely.
We were just a joke before that in the international.
Yes, and America's most famous wine growing region is Napa Valley in California. And it was because of that tasting that kind of put it on the map. I mean, this was a lot of hippies coming from the East Coast, driving out to California, buying cheap farmland. A lot of it were like grape farms and like plum farms for like prunes and raisins. And some of it was converted converted to Vitis vinifera, which is the genus for the type of grapes that are grown specifically for wine. That winery is called Chateau Montelena. It's still around. It was a Chardonnay. It was a white wine. It was actually, in an ideal world, we would have tasted that wine because it's really special. But it's like $40 a bottle. And I think that's, in my opinion, that's the real problem with wines from America, specifically California, or especially California. They're just not accessible to the everyday consumer. So how can you tell someone like, oh, you know, whatever, this wine from Gallo is garbage, or...
Getting wine.
Go ahead, keep talking.
It's okay. We'll clean it.
The wine from Gallo is garbage, but it's only $7.99 a bottle.
Right.
$7.99 is like at the price point where I start to go, I don't know if I'm going to buy this. I'd rather go up $5 more.
Yeah,
Sure.
I need at least 4 like digit places. I feel like.
Okay. Yeah, I think most people feel comfortable in the 4-digit places. I can say, though, that there are wines from Spain that cost $7.99 that could rival a bottle from California that's $19.99.
I believe that, yeah.
that is the issue that I have with American wine, because it's like you don't want to make this accessible to this new group of consumers, the millennials, who are going to absolutely take over what, how, we sell wine and how we market it and how, we do with all that. So if they're not doing that, which California certainly is not, they're trying, but no one wants to spend $50 on a bottle of, Napa Valley Chardonnay. They'll turn to other places like Spain and France and Italy.
Yeah. That's sort of one of my general questions too, because I am about as much of a wine noob as someone could be. Yet I do love wine, and I have noticed that sort of what I was saying earlier. If it's under $10, it's, in my experience, it hasn't been a good experience generally. If it's between $13 and $20, it's usually actually pretty good. And then once I get into the 25 or higher range, I don't even really know quite what I'm looking for anyways. And that's where it sort of gets, I know it's all good, but I feel as if I don't notice some of the distinctions that would warrant me spending more money on it, because I don't know which ones I'm picking when I go to the store. So that's kind of like one of my general questions. Do you have any advice in terms of, because I went to the store earlier and I tried to just find something that I thought sounded okay that was in the $15 to $20 range, but I don't know what to base it on. I mean, is there any guidelines for just noob people like me who go into a wine store?
I want something that smells like cat pee, you might be able to say, right?
Yeah, that's a start, right?
If that's what you're into. I mean, I think that the best thing to do is just ask the person behind the counter. Those people are, hopefully they're trained at least a little bit. And if they're not, they can at least point you in the direction of what's most popular. But that's a good place to start. I mean, there's books and stuff out there, but I don't think it needs to be that complicated.
I got a book. I don't know if you've heard of it. Have you heard of the guy Richard Betts?
No.
So he wrote one of these, like, it's like a cardboard book. It's got maybe 20 pages tops, and it's a scratch and sniff like book. So he just goes through all the things you might, here are like the different aromas you might pick up on, and you scratch and sniff, and then here's like this kind of soil, this kind of, and you just kind of
really
get a little bit of an education, very, very simplified. But for me, it was just cool to be able to go, oh, okay, yeah, I smell the difference between like pear notes and, berry notes. Like, now let me see if I can notice that next time I drink. And of course I didn't. I was just like, smells like wine.
Well, I'm curious about that. How accurate is that, Alycia? Something like a scratch and sniff book. Is that really representative of...
I scratch and sniff all the time.
That's what I mean. Maybe it wasn't really a scratch and sniff book and you just thought it was, Luke. Is that... How on point are those? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. I have no idea how accurate they are. What I can say though is, like, if they're, God, I don't want to get. I just don't. I feel like I'm going to get caught up in the minutia of all of this, because it's like, I find wine to be a very complicated topic.
Yeah.
But
for sure.
I think that best example that I can think of in Riesling. In German Riesling, specifically from the Moselle region of Germany, which is along the Moselle River, which is my favorite type of wine. A key characteristic of that wine is petrol, like diesel fuel.
Really?
And I really like that. I don't know why.
I used to love the smell of gas at the gas station when I was a kid. I'd be like,
Right.
It smells so good.
Yeah, that lawnmower.
You get high off of the
container
fumes a little bit.
in the garage that you would just kind of stand over staring at for hours on end in the summer. Yeah.
So the thing is, and obviously this is the same with beer and the same with anything, is if I'm smelling something that smells like diesel fuel, you might smell the same smell but relate it differently based on like your sensory memory. Like one of my wine professors in college, we get petrol, he smells a freshly opened can of tennis balls. We're smelling the same thing.
I've heard that one a lot from wine people, the open tennis ball thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's the same. It's the same aroma. It's just associating it differently. So that's where I think that a scratch and sniff book might not make any sense.
Yeah, that's true.
What is the nastiest smell that is associated with wine?
Cat
like
piss.
in like beers, there's like a horse blanket, like a barn smell.
So I guess she means like off flavors. Like
No. Like barn smell is a good smell in some beers, like horse blanket.
But
it's a good thing.
It's an off flavor. in terms of like how it's produced by the yeast. Is what's the wine equivalent? Like sometimes you can get beers that are like sulfury or metallic. Like what's the funkiest like wine taste?
I mean, like you talk about sulfur and like metal. That to me, if I opened a bottle of wine that smelled like sulfur or smelled like metal, I mean, depending on what kind of metal, but like I would be like, this bottle is flawed.
Yeah, something happened.
So what's the funkiest thing that is considered acceptable? Is it petrol?
It's no. I mean, that's very, very acceptable. No, I guess the same thing. Barnyard is what we would call in the wine world, which I think is the same thing you're talking about, which is produced by Brettanomyces, which you guys know about. I don't like Brett in my wine. I do like Brett in my beer. I don't know why. It's just It's different for some. It tastes. I don't know. It smells different for me in those parts.
I think the source sugar just creates very different stuff between grapes and malt sugars. Because I agree. I like a nice Brett beer. I really love a Brett beer aged in wine barrels, and we have one we're going to bust out after the tasting. Cool. So I can make it about beer because I'm the asshole who does that with everything.
I think the nastiest thing for me that's the nastiest thing, and the issue with Brett is that it usually it just like appears, it's like, oh, okay, here's this like weird fucking bacteria that can I swear on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fuck yeah.
You already did. So.
Welcome to the Thunk Tank, Alycia.
Yeah.
Well, Brett is a type of yeast. It just behaves more like a bacteria, right?
But it grows. Yes, it's a type of yeast, but it grows like crazy, and you can't.
Yeah.
If it gets in your barrel,
you can't kill it.
You cannot stop it from growing in your barrel without bleaching the barrel. And why would you want to bleach like your $2,000 French, oak wine barrel? Or maybe they're like $3,000.
Do they use potassium metabisulfate to treat your barrels? I think beer guys do.
I have no idea.
Or actually, one barrel hall I worked at, they would to do that to like keep Brett out. They would take these like sulfur pellets and they like a bung that lowers it in the barrel, and you'd actually burn it like in the barrel, and you'd like smoke it out, and that would like rechar it.
I have no idea. I don't know anything about barrels. I wish I knew more about barrels.
I was going to ask you what your favorite size of wine barrel is.
Ooh, that depends on the wine.
Because they all have amazing names.
I have some questions. I have a lot of questions about process, but
Okay.
But see, that's the size of a barrel. That's really funny.
A butt barrel? That's a type of barrel?
BUTT. It's bigger than a puncheon and smaller than a pipe.
Hogshead is my favorite, but
so I think a puncheon is a larger barrel, right?
Is there a relationship between the size of the barrel and the taste?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because if you have a barrel that's new oak, and it's small and you put a wine in it, it's gonna get more oak characteristics. So personally, for me, I don't really want the oak to cover up my wine. It's a very delicate product. Like, why would you cover up all of this beautiful fruit that these people have spent all this time and energy and money growing and cover it up with like oak? I mean, you can add anything you want to wine in the United States. Like, there's no FDA regulation. Like, there's wines out there who like add oak chips into the barrels to make it more oaky to like cover up their shit wine. And it's just there's a lot of garbage out there, and I feel bad because that's what makes it so confusing and hard when you go into a liquor store or a wine shop to select wine. So you just go with what you're familiar with and move on. You never get to try anything new.
I tend to always get the same bottle that we found a couple of years ago, and I'll look around and pretend I'm browsing. Oh, can I help you with anything? No, I'm good. And then I just like zero in on the same bottle I get every week.
Yeah.
Well,
along the same lines as that, Alycia, what is your take on like basic bitches who are drinking fruity whites?
What's the skinny girl one? All those cupcake wines. Do you sell a lot? I bet you sell a lot of that.
Are you glad that they're drinking it, or like resentful that they're not trying?
I don't sell those wines, and I don't blame them. These wines have been marketed toward them. I blame the people who are producing this crap, not the consumer.
McDonald's is the issue.
It's not the consumer's fault that they're going toward this thing that was marketed toward them and then pretending they like it even if they don't.
I mean, they literally designed the marketing campaign to make it work on your psychology. So of course it's going to work.
Well, whenever somebody tells me, "Oh, I love that wine," you just fill the glass with ice and then pour wine in.
Oh,
is that supposed to be a thing? Because my instinct, again, as somebody who knows nothing about wine, is that doesn't sound right.
I know people who drink wine with ice, and I try to always advise, or the red wine with ice, and I try to always
red wine with ice.
I try to always advise them that if they want their red wine cold, to refrigerate it instead of adding ice to it. But I try not to tell people, I don't want to ever tell people what to do.
You got to be careful. You don't want to get you don't want to make people feel like you're ruining their routine or just ruining their enjoyment of it. Same thing with coffee. If you go, I wonder if you'll try this without cream and just taste the fact of it's Ethiopian coffee and it has these subtle flavors. They're like, yeah, no, I always put cream and sugar in my coffee. I'm like, no, I know, but that's why it tastes like sugary cream.
Right, because you're really saying that, no, you put milk and sugar into your Dunkin' Donuts is what you do. You haven't had coffee, but now I sound like an asshole for saying that.
Yeah, and as soon as you sound like an asshole, they don't listen to you anyway, so it's a lose-lose.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah, well, you can't tell someone they're drinking something wrong. I once gave Joe, I think it was an 18 or 21-year-old scotch, and it was like a tiny shot glass bottle worth. That tiny bottle was like a $12 bottle or 12-pound bottle, so it was like a $15 bottle. And before I could even finish the first half of the sentence, I was going to go through a really detailed tasting notes with him, and I was like, "So this whiskey was," and then it was gone. He just chugged all. He's like, "That was good. Is there any more?"
I was
and
so mad.
That annoyed me a little bit, but also he enjoyed it. So how angry can I really get?
Yeah, I was wasted, and it was delicious.
Yeah,
Mission
I
accomplished.
bet it was.
But today, I want you to tell us, Alycia. I want you to tell us what to do.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
'Cause
All right.
I know
Oh, we should get into this white wine we have here.
I have one more question about oak, though.
Yeah, okay.
I'm getting into oak lately.
Yeah.
As one
So,
might
As one does at this stage in his life.
in quarantine.
I'm noticing a trend in craft beer a few years now for foeder age beers or foeder age beers. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Foeder.
But foeder, those are those big oak tanks. They're like big oak fermenter tanks.
Okay.
That you kind of season, and a lot of breweries I know, they'll use the same yeast blend, but they'll change the beer style all the time to add flavors. And I'm just wondering, is that something that gets done in wine, or is it a white wine barrel? Does it get reused from year to year, or is it that vintage from that year? We're going to start over with a new barrel next year. Can you put Chardonnay in Pinot Noir barrels? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
How's that work?
bourbon. I'm pretty sure you legally are only allowed to use the barrels once.
Yeah. But beer, you can reuse them multiple times. So is there what's it like for the wine world?
That's the winemaker's choice. It's really expensive to keep using new barrels over and over again because they're really expensive. French, I think I don't really know what the rates are now. I think a new American oak barrel is $2,000, and a new French oak barrel is $3,000. So if you have a winery, a really large winery, and you've got 500 barrels with wine sitting in it, and you're only going to use those barrels once, that's very expensive to do. So then you have to charge a lot for your wine. And then that's a whole new issue. There's a lot of people, smaller producers in France, that are more focused, vineyard focused, which are wines that I tend to gravitate toward, wines that are kind of made in the vineyard and the vineyard's focused on, that will just keep reusing barrels because they don't want to impart oak on their fruit. And those are the types of wines that I really like. Which is interesting because the white wine that we have is actually aged in oak, which is not traditional, but I absolutely love this wine.
What woods are used then?
So that sounds like a perfect segue to this wine we're going to talk about.
Oh yeah,
so why don't
folks
you
listening,
take it
we
away?
all have the same white wine here, so we're gonna taste it and see how stupid or maybe smart we are.
And thank you so much, Alycia.
I didn't do any
for
cheating either. I
researching
didn't look up this wine and tasting notes or anything. I just wanted to taste it honest and fresh.
Same. We're coming in as blind as possible, so we're your little ducklings in the nest that need to be tended to and cared for. So
You're a pretty big little duckling, Johnny.
yeah, that's fair.
Alycia did great work to make sure that all of us could get this wine too.
Yeah,
on
sorry
different
for being-
sides of the country.
Sorry for being so pushy about that, but I just really thought that it was important because Luke had bought a wine, and I was like, dude, your wine's gonna be way more fancy than ours. So anyway, so the first wine that we have is Ferrari Carano Fume Blanc, which is a Sauvignon Blanc from Sonoma County in California. It's Sauvignon Blanc is the name of the grape. It's a white grape that originated in Bordeaux, France, and in the 50s they, brought some clippings over to the United States, planted from France and Italy, planted a bunch in California. There was a big outbreak of this bug called phylloxera, which feeds on the roots of vines, and they had to dig in all of Napa Valley up, and Sonoma. Sonoma wasn't even really a thing
By
back
bug,
then.
do you mean actual bug or like a bacteria or a virus or something?
It's a bug. It's a little, like, it's a bug, and
Oh, wow.
it was in the rootstock. There was like larvae or something like that in the rootstock that came over from France, and like Bordeaux had a huge outbreak. Germany had a huge outbreak. So they had to, in Napa, they had to dig it all up, plant new vines. So most of the wine that's being grown in France now are not from original vine cuttings.
It's an
Yeah,
insect.
that's something I remember in North Carolina. The wine scene there when I lived there would brag about. They brought clippings over in like the 1700s or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when some blight took out a bunch in France, they were like, "Oh, this is the same thing," and they brought them back. So people in the wine scene in North Carolina would try to claim that French wines were from North Carolina. And I was like, I think you just like were the greenhouse for the vines for a little bit. You were an incubator. But yeah, I have heard that before. I didn't realize it was like such a global thing though. That could that happen again? Are our vines in danger?
I don't think so. They don't. No one seems to think so. No one seems to think so. I mean, I guess there's always a possibility, but they really tried to like wipe out this bug as much as they could because they cost lots of money.
Yeah, when you
So-
said the word dig up all the vines, I was like, it sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. Yeah.
You have to. The vines are now socially.
I
distanced.
barely do
They're
my
6
laundry.
feet apart. Right.
Right. Yeah, I can barely do laundry.
Should I open it?
So, yeah,
How
yeah.
much
oh,
ice
already
should I
did,
pour with
so.
this?
as much as you want. No, I'm just kidding. I'd rather you not pour any ice. We took this
Okay,
out of the
well.
fridge like 15 minutes ago, so it was really cold. I love this wine so much. It's from a vineyard, or I'm sorry, it's from a winery in Sonoma called Ferrari Carano, which were these vines were planted originally. I mean, like in the 60s, they were kind of these pioneers in California, if you were. The Carano family were one of the first kind of like originating families into the California wine scene that migrated from Italy, and at the time, there were only a handful. I also served this wine at my wedding. I like it so much. Speaking of my wedding, I listened to a podcast one time. I think it was on this channel.
Oh yeah, what was it called?
And all I want...
Was it Radiolab or Wait, don't
No,
tell
it was,
me?
it was
or-
NPR. Yeah.
So all I can say, I mean, I'm not gonna really say names or anything. What I am
blame
going
Luke.
to say,
Luke
though-
Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, and Luke Skywalker.
That's right.
no, what I'm going to
That's
say
a reference to another podcast.
is that there are two people that host this podcast who have never been married and who had very strong opinions about this wedding. And then the one person who was married had strong opinions, but had a little bit more empathy because it's very stressful.
It's very strange.
I
There's
thought
so many
that Luke
moving
Skywalker
parts.
was the biggest asshole.
There's
At
so many
least I
moving
don't
parts
remember
beyond your
criticizing
control.
the wine.
The wine was
You were
fantastic.
because you were probably drinking beer.
No, I know. I did. I don't think. I think
bar-
I had a
the
glass of. I
bartenders-
think I
the
had a glass of
bartenders-
red with dinner.
The bartenders were shitty at that wedding,
I
but
know.
the beer and the wine choices were awesome.
Well, they-
the servers, and that's not you, that's the venue. Just didn't
If you
have
could,
great-
if you
yeah,
could get the
whatever.
right beer, it was awesome.
But yeah,
They often-
they did have 2 beers on tap, and they gave me the wrong one when I tried to order. So I was like, that's pretty hard to do.
I know. It's funny. Like
Cut
Mike
me
and I
off,
were
and I
so
wasn't even drunk.
we were so removed from that because we were like in our own world. I think I had
sure, yeah.
the same glass of Ferrari Carano Fume Blanc in my like. I think I had the same glass all night long.
Oh yeah,
But we also
and your
had
band was great.
Oh,
The band was really good.
They were really fun. All right, so let's dig in. So Ferrari Carano Fume Blanc. Fume Blanc is not a technical term. It doesn't really mean anything. It's a term that this guy named Robert Mondavi coined in the 70s.
I've had
Fire
Mondavi
white.
wine.
Huh? Yeah.
I think
yeah.
I've drank wine with that name on the bottle,
Yeah.
Mondavi.
He's like a California. He's dead now, but he was like a California pioneer. Also, yeah.
Always
Should I
alive
start
in our
pouring, or
hearts.
do you have to let the bottle breathe?
No, just pour.
Is there a way that you pour that's best?
I've always been really bad at that turn that you guys do. I always get a little drop down the side of the bottle, but I can pour beer bottles without doing that. But for some reason, wine is impossible. I'm so impressed when people don't spill wine.
Well, I think they're probably shaped a little bit different than beer bottles. Maybe not some. I don't really know. I mean, it happens to me too. I think that there's a trick where if you start, I'm just going to try to describe this, not knowing that people aren't looking at me. If you start pouring, and then you tilt the bottle back up, and then you twist, that's a way to catch the drop.
Okay, I'm gonna try that. on
Should
my
you
second
start
or
with
third
your
bite.
wrist sort of bent a little bit the other way so that you can get more turn, or just is it the motion
Wrist
itself?
bent the other way so you can get more turn.
It's like
Yeah, if you
there
bent
was
your wrist up.
like-
Yeah. More.
Oh,
So you're flicking it back to normal.
Yeah.
No, I think that'll just. I actually think that might. Well, let's try. It might make it drip more.
I like to tie
Kinda
a cloth around the neck like they do in Italian restaurants. I like doing that.
Oh yeah, that's a thing, right?
Have any of you been to a restaurant that has a sommelier before?
Yes, a number of them.
Yeah.
Oh, did
We're very
Kara just say
worldly
yes?
people.
A number of them.
But I've been to France a number
Yeah, we're
of
world
times.
travelers.
I've been,
I've been to Italy.
yeah.
Yeah, me and
We've
Luke are
been
just
to- yeah.
Americans.
Been to Europe a few
no,
times.
yeah, I haven't.
My
All right,
first,
let's taste
yeah,
it.
Okay. So, all right. So for our Cabernet Sauvignon Blanc, so I guess the proper way to taste wine, if you guys want me to talk about that, I guess you will. You kind of you look at it. I mean, I really haven't done this in years. You look at it
Bubbly.
kind of at an angle, like if you were to hold your wine glass sideways, so you wouldn't be having, you wouldn't pour a full pour at first. If you're just tasting, you have it at an angle so that it makes kind of this oval shape around the glass, so that you can see it's called clarity, which is probably the same thing in beer. You can look that it's not cloudy, so it's probably filtered, and then you smell it, kind of get your first impression, and then you swirl it if you can. And then you smell it again, and you should notice a difference after the swirl.
Oh yeah, that's cool. It smells. It smells kind of. My God, I know nothing about wine. What came to my mind is fruitier.
That's fine though.
That's what I was going to say. It smells fruity.
Yeah,
after
it does
the
though. Yeah, it's
swirl.
it's more of a has more of a punch to it.
Yeah, I think it just like releases like I don't know, aromatic molecules. I am not a scientist. like
It
Kara
makes
is, I don't
sense.
know.
Yeah.
I feel like so
All
much
right.
of the language that one gets better at talking about something like this is because of like data points over time. Like you can differentiate. Like, okay, you said fruity, but what fruit? And like,
Right.
in what way is it? Like,
Well, I feel that way.
dried
about,
apricot.
I feel
or,
that
like,
way
you
about
know?
coffee too.
Yeah, you just
Wait.
get better with more data
Yeah.
points. Yeah,
Right.
Wait, Luke, you said
So-
you said dried apricot. Is that because you can smell dried apricot?
that could have been a Freudian. I'm going to say yes because you seem to want me to say I smell dried apricot.
You seem to think that he's onto something other than just being a maniac. Yeah.
There's no right or wrong. Like
Did I
said
have
earlier,
this
like-
wine about a month ago? It smells. I mean,
I get
a
hints
year
of
ago at a
sun-dried-
wedding, it smells so familiar.
I get hints of sun-dried juice box and taxidermied stoat. See, you can't challenge me on that. You don't know what that smells like.
Alicia, would
Nope.
you say dried apricot is something that came to you when you smelled this, though?
Fresh apricot came to me actually though,
Oh, yeah, I was going to say fresh, yeah.
or like white peach, like stone fruits. Like
Yeah.
like that.
Stone fruit.
I'm not a good enough in anything to get like specific stone fruits, but when there's that stone fruit taste, it jumps out at me. But it's hard unless it's like really on the nose with the apricot or peach or whatever. It's real hard for me to get super specific.
So I want to say something to if anyone is going to ever listen to this.
Oh, they will.
I think that the more different foods you eat. So if you were to, I mean, I used to do this in college all the time. If you just go to the grocery store and you're like, oh, I've never had kumquats before. Well, how could you ever pick that up in anything you're tasting or drinking or whatever? If you've never, so like go buy like, I don't know, buy like 5 kumquats if you can buy some kumquats. And like, oh, I've never had dragon fruit before. Like, all right, spend the $9 on that really expensive thing that tastes just like a kiwi. But
But now you know.
Now you've got data
and
points.
now, yeah, exactly. So I think anyone who's like getting into wine or like wants to talk about, the different, nuances of what they're tasting, my best advice is to just keep eating things that you've never eaten before and keep doing that.
Have you ever heard of those like tasting kits? They're like $200 online, but it has like 200 different like vials of chemicals that are like the tasting wheel of wine, basically.
Oh, spike kits.
Something like that. Yeah, I
Kind of a
forgot the
thing?
name of this one I was thinking of, but I obviously am not about to spend $200 just to get better at having wine with dinner, but the idea seemed cool. Like if you were studying for something, you could really learn to differentiate between things like that.
Yeah, we had those when I was going to college. I mean, we had to buy them. I mean, it was not $200. It was like discounted, but they were very expensive. And they did help. I mean, you don't drink them. You just smell them. It did help, because then you could just like keep going back to it. And then you can go to the wine and then like smell all these things and then smell the wine and then, and then kind of like deduce down based on that. I personally don't think that matters at all for talking about wine with your friends.
Yeah.
I
In fact, it might even be bad.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, like there's no like who cares if like like it smells like your weird uncle's like sweaty armpit. Like it just doesn't fucking matter.
How'd you know what I smelled out of this wine?
Yeah, I'm getting. I get repressed Thanksgiving memories out of this one.
I get star fruit and like freshly cut tree branch from a fruit tree.
I think what I get most importantly from smelling this is what I get out of most things that are kind of better quality that I like, such as coffee, where if it's really fresh and it's really good beans, I even just like sitting and smelling it for a while. And that's how I really, I know it's going to be good quality, where you just smell it and that's an adventure in of itself, right?
Could I say
and
like
this
maybe
is the same thing to me.
three-dimensional smell? Like
You can say whatever you want.
Oh, what I mean is
guys
like the smell is not just like this. It's like you could tell it's like a musical chord. It's not just one note. It's a bunch of notes balancing each other. Like I definitely get that vibe from this.
Yeah, whereas when you
It's interesting.
smell cheap wine, it just kind of it might just smell sort of metallic-y or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a one
note
metallic,
and you're like, what note is
right.
that? Like E flat? Like
Or
what the
just
fuck are you
it
doing?
just fades out with metallic tones or something,
Yeah.
or a metallic tone or something, and that's when I
like
know.
the bag of
Just
shitty
pour it
coffee.
over
You
ice.
smell it. You're like, it smells like gross, oily coffee.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are you're talking about complexity, and that that's what makes a high quality wine high quality. This wine, they make so much of this wine. Oh, I just love it though. I mean, I know that there's love put in it. It's an all female winemaking team at Ferrari Carano now, led by this woman named Rhonda Carano. She was one of the founders of the wineries. Her husband Don Carano died a couple years ago, and she took over everything.
Wait, what's her name?
Rhonda Carano.
So they were Ron and Don Carano.
Yeah.
That sounds like a cool couple.
Yeah.
The Rondons.
So, I have a bunch of wine questions.
Wait. But I've looked at it and I've smelled it.
Yeah, I like where you're going with this, Kara. Keep it going. Come on.
Something about legs. Something about.
Oh yeah. So you can look at the legs. Legs can tell you, and what legs are is like when you swirl it in the glass. Legs are the the parts of the wine that stick to the glass, and you can kind of start seeing it fall down the inside of the glass in these little drips.
Yeah.
And what you can tell from that, if you really want to do that, is you can kind of tell if they're fatter legs and they're moving slower. It probably indicates that there's more sugar and or more alcohol in the wine. That'll make it stick to the inside of the glass. If it kind of, and it's good to have some of that, because when you're swirling something like, I don't know, something really cheap or not cheap, but something of not of quality, you just won't get any of that. It'll just like slide right. It'll just like drip right down the inside.
I love those signs like that. Yeah.
Fat.
So I was getting
These
thin
are
legs.
fat, slow going, but I don't know if that's.
these are good legs, good thick gams on this one. I would say.
What do you think, Alycia?
Yeah, I got thick
Yeah, I don't-
protein legs.
They can, the alcohol is actually pretty high, 13.8%.
How high does wine go? Is there like an upper limit?
And what's a table wine?
A table wine is, I think, is any wine that is still,
What does that mean?
that it doesn't have bubbles in it.
Oh, I thought you were about to say that is still this or
Not
that.
good.
I was like,
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh,
oh
yeah,
shit,
that's-
the internet went out.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It doesn't refer to alcohol strength.
Table wine? Oh, yeah, I guess it would. Yeah, table wine does refer to alcohol strength. So I guess table wine was somewhere.
My brain says that it's 11, but I'm
11
definitely
or
wrong.
Maybe 9. I think it's less than 9. I don't know. So when you're tasting wine, it's like it's going from like the range of flavors. Sweet is like how dry it is to how sweet it is. Isn't that like the main spectrum for tasting it?
Yeah.
Because like you guys, there's not really like super bitter wine out there unless it's like flavored with a bitter fruit or something. It's like a weird country wine then. Can you explain quickly, like what makes a wine dry, or like what makes a wine sweet?
Yeah, so there's that scale, and a lot of people have that question, like, well, what is a dry wine? A dry wine just means that it's not sweet. So being at the least sweet level, a wine is dry, and then it graduates to off dry, medium dry, sweet, something like that. So
when people talk about like buttery Chardonnays, is that because there's that it's like a residual sweetness that causes that? Is that the oak? Because that's something I've heard from people. They talk about. I used to work at a craft beer bar that had wine, and these southern women would come in all the time, like, is it a buttery Chardonnay? And I'm like, I don't even know what that question means. Like, I had never heard a buttery wine, and like multiple people would say it throughout the summers.
yeah,
Is that just a weird region?
Well, when it's hot out, you let the butter swim around in it.
Is that just a southern thing? Because they fry their steak,
Right.
their chicken and steak, and their steak and breaded chicken or whatever?
no, it's not just a southern thing. It refers to part of the fermentation process, which it's called. I feel like I'm going to get so boring. It's called malolactic fermentation. So
I love this. This is
awesome.
what I
Yeah,
want
no,
to
I've learned so much in the last 20 minutes. This is awesome.
So when you ferment fruit, when you ferment grapes, a lot of times they'll have this harsh acid called malic acid. And there is a process in which I do not know what the actual process is. I think it's by adding or taking something away, where you convert the malic acid into lactic acid. And lactic, like lactose.
It's probably
gives-
trading some hydrogen atom somewhere in there, whatever.
Well, isn't lactic acid kind of sour?
All organic
Then I have it
carbon
backwards.
chains.
No,
'Cause the beer
malolactic fermentation, malolactic. So
Because
you
lactic
convert-
acid comes from lactobacillus in beer, I think.
Does it? It's also
Or
what your muscles produce when they're
Lacto.
tired.
But what is in milk?
It's
Like
also why
lactose.
I'm sore after running on
That's
the beach
lactose.
yesterday.
Yeah, that's a milk sugar.
So yes, so that's what.
So
it's
it
doing.
breaks down the grape sugars and produces milk sugar.
kind of
Converts it to. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so
That
that's
would
what-
make sense.
So that's
It
what
tastes
would
like butter.
that's what would give it like a butter or a creamy flavor. But
I feel like I've
The-
definitely had a buttery white wine before. I can't tell you what it was, but I remember that sort of like mouth feel of like a thicker, buttery, like sweetness in it somewhere in my past.
it's interesting because
Nobody make a joke.
all red wine goes through malolactic fermentation, but none of it. I haven't had a red wine that really tastes like butter or dairy, which I always found was interesting. That's a natural process for red wine through the fermentation process.
Do you think
But
the different grapes just mask that flavor from popping out or something?
maybe, yeah.
Are there subspecies of those grapes? The Vitis.
Vitis vinifera. Yeah, there's not the subspecies would be the varietals. But then there's Vitis vinifera for winemaking, and then there's another called Vitis lambrusco, which is actually a lot of the wild grapes in the United States. That's Vitis lambrusco, and it's not great for making wine, but people do it. It's because it's really cheap, and it's just like your backyard grapes that happen to be randomly growing on your fridge. It's like, oh, I'm going to make a jug of wine. But it's not really, they don't make that high quality one.
Apparently, we have a blueberry bush at this house. We just moved in; it hasn't come in yet. But if I get enough blueberries, I'm going to try to make a blueberry country wine, and I'm definitely going to call you up for some tips about that.
Wait, though. Okay, with grapes, it's wine. With pears and apples, it's cider.
No, apples
blueberries?
are cider.
What about pear cider? Like, would what? When
I think
is it not a wine?
they're still using some apple sugars. In
When
their
is it
pear
not a
cider.
wine? Is wine not just grapes?
I think in the United States, you can literally call it whatever you want. I mean, these wines don't even have to be like, so when we talk about a varietal, that's the type of grape that's used to make a bottle of wine. In the in California, it doesn't even have to be 100% of that grape. Actually, in no state does it have to be 100%, with the exception of Washington. I believe Washington has to be 95%. In California, it only has to, so if it says Merlot on the bottle, legally, it only has to be 75% Merlot. And
so
then
would you like is it? Do they fill up the remainder of that with like other fruits for flavor, or with just cheap fermentable sugars?
they they'll fill it with like some other like cheap wine grapes that or like wine juice that they have, grape juice, whatever. So like, there'll be a 75% Merlot, and then they'll take 15% of Syrah and mix it in, which is like, they're only doing that because
They can.
their Merlot sucks, and they're trying to.
That's essentially
make it
watering it down to
palatable.
make it cheaper.
Yeah.
Well, or blending it to make it less harsh, like they do with whiskeys and stuff. Yeah.
Interesting.
Or it's just in Europe they blend wines all the time, but they don't even talk about it. Like there's so much Bordeaux that's on the market, it's all Merlot, and everyone's like, I hate Merlot. It's like, well, no, you don't. You just had like 3 bottles of Bordeaux last night. It was like they were like 80% Merlot. But
So in terms of taste, like we smelled this, like is there anything different between the smell and the taste of this wine?
well, I think that the aroma is always going to be more. It's always going to be like the nose of it's always going to be more intense than the palate, and so like the reason that you smell it and then you taste it, when you taste it, you're just trying to confirm what you smelled. Like if it matches up, and if it doesn't matches up, you go do the process again until you figure it out.
Are you
That
supposed to
tastes
make
like how it smells. That's amazing.
Are you supposed to make the weird like bong bubbling sound?
Oh, we're drinking it.
Oh my god,
Wait. Tell
was
me what
gross.
you're doing, Alycia. I want to learn.
that was amazing.
Oh,
Johnny tried to slurp and just breathed it into his lungs, I think.
John hailed some wine.
We'll walk through on that.
Boom. Yeah, I'm gonna need you to go over that one more time.
What I do, I highly suggest not doing that in public. You look like such an asshole. But
Yeah, go to your
I
local
don't
pub and order a glass of white wine and slurp it around and see what
I'm
happens.
gonna stand at the bar and hold it up like this over my head at the bar and go, yes, while I look at it for clarity.
The classic joke is you order a wine and just go, I think it's a white. Like you're studying it. Like,
yeah.
It's not you. You're just an
How
asshole.
do you do it?
I think it's
Oh.
I don't know if I can explain this without.
No, but I mean, just even the
What-
process of tasting.
Yeah, so the process of tasting. So this will be the last step in the tasting process, and then you go and start it all over again. So you kind of want to make sure that if you can't, although I suggest practicing with water, kind of the aeration and swirling around of it in your mouth. At the very least, you should swish it around like it's mouthwash and make sure that it coats every part of your mouth. And then you kind of want to feel your teeth with your tongue, feel the roof, just feel everywhere, and kind of see. I mean, after you swallow or after you spit, kind of see, what it feels like.
like if
And
it's
then-
dry or sticky.
Yeah, I mean,
or-
you can. What's cool about this wine is that it has a lot of natural acidity. So grapes are highly, highly acidic, and that's in a quality wine. Like everyone, like we're looking for acidity. We really want acidity. That's like the qualitative peak that you want, because high acidic, higher the acid, I think it pairs with food better. Because if you take a sip of this wine that's acidic,
For you
and swallow it.
ASMR folks at home, you're going to enjoy this cast.
and you swallow it or spit it out. I don't know if you want to do this on your guys' floor. I have a spit cup here.
Yeah,
You
Luke,
open your
don't
mouth.
spit all over my floor.
If you open your mouth after you swallow it or spit it, you're like there's saliva that's building up and
Yeah.
you're salivating, and so that sensation is due to the acidity working with the physical attributes inside your mouth.
Are those
when you,
like the
when you
glands
have
that-
vinegar chips and it
Yeah.
triggers that
Yeah.
salivation.
The
And
same
then-
glands that if you imagine biting into a lemon, right? Like you would just feel them almost engage, even though you didn't actually bite into it. You just imagine it, and you're like, ooh, and you pucker a little bit. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about the reason for that is that if you start salivating, I mean, like think about when you're hungry. Like, isn't that the kind of like stereotypical thing? So wine and food really should go together, because wine will, it's going to make you hungry. Drinking wine it'll legit make you hungry. I don't know if it's a psychological thing or if it's like an actual physical thing, but you will get hungry from
my brain has psychologically somewhere paired, like when I'm having wine, I kind of want some cheese and crackers.
Yeah, it's always a good idea.
I think that's more cultural for me. Like when I drink wine, I'm either really in a trashy mode or really classy. There's really no in between for me.
That's the difference between the $9 bottle and the $20 bottle.
Yeah. It's one or the other. It's either a fancy charcuterie plate or I'm drinking it in a Disney pint glass full of ice.
Yeah, with a bag of Cheez-Its.
At
With
Disney.
a bag of Cheez-Its. A bag of Cheez-Its and smart food popcorn. Yeah.
In a house at 2 a.m. with his sister.
Yeah.
I have to be honest with you guys. The more the more I go into this industry, the trashier I get. I mean, I don't even care anymore, man. Just like pour it in a Dixie or pour it in a solo cup. I just don't care. I mean, but at least I have like some back knowledge. I
get that. I totally get that.
I was going to ask a question about that because I was sensing you made a few comments to the idea that, well, yeah, there are all these details and all these rules and all these, you must do this with this kind of wine. You can only decant this kind of, and there's a sense of like, go fuck your rules, pour the wine and enjoy it, right?
That's how I feel. But most people, I guess, especially the consumer, doesn't feel. I mean, most consumers who are buying like expensive wine don't feel that way.
Well, because they want to justify it in a way, right?
Maybe.
Or it's fun for like we used to do a lot of beer tastings, and we were in beer tasting clubs in our old town, and like it's just fun to nerd out on your interests. It's like listening to music, Luke. You could just throw on a song that you're like, oh, this sounds good, or you could be like really aware and train yourself and be like, oh, I know what he's doing here. I know what this chord is. Like, oh wow, that was a really interesting progression. Whereas I might just be like, yeah, sounds good. That's a catchy tune.
But I think the equivalent for music would be that in the music world, sometimes people get super geeky about equipment and they're like, oh, I'm playing on this mouthpiece with this lead pipe and I've taped on this kind of like thing with here. And it's like, yeah, you still sound like shit. Like, how about you just like play?
Yeah,
and there are other people that are like, yeah, I haven't changed my equipment in 50 years and like play something beautiful, you know?
Willie Nelson's guitar with the hole in it, Tiger or whatever it was.
And it probably sounded more true and honest and all those qualities you want out of music. Same with wine, right? You could probably do all this fancy stuff and aerate it and whatever, and then it's like it's still shit wine or still good wine, or you enjoyed it or you didn't enjoy it. Like I totally like that sentiment. I picked up on it right at the beginning when we were like, oh yeah, we only have one wine glass, and you're like, whatever. Because I thought you might go, oh, you're
really
not going to really
reassuring.
get the right aroma without the right glass or something.
I mean, look, if we were drinking a $60 bottle of like Burgundy, maybe that would, you should have a better experience with that anyway. But like, we're doing this for fun, and I've drank $100 Bordeaux out of a jelly jar with no food. Also,
Alycia, I think that quote right there is going to be at the top of the episode as our lead-in.
Yeah, we always have a lead in, and that might be it.
That's the clip.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, when I was first getting into it, I definitely felt that way. I was definitely like, I don't know. I would feel that way. And I have people who are getting into the industry who have kind of taken under my wing, I think, who still feel that way. But like, as time goes on, it's just like, you realize it doesn't matter. Just enjoy the experience, you know? And if you want to learn more, feel free to ask questions. But if you just want to enjoy your thing, just do it. Mike Spazzato actually said something to me once that really resonated, because I was talking to him about this same exact thing. And he said that he feels the same way about music, is that the longer he plays music, the more he's like actually okay with listening to Taylor Swift's new album, or, listening to Post Malone and like checking it out and not judging it, and just being like, okay, this is a thing and these people are making tons of money, like, good for them. I guess I feel that way about wine. Although I don't appreciate when people are putting crap wine out there and marketing it towards the general public, because it's not good. And those wines have legitimate poison in them.
What do you mean legitimate
What the?
poison?
Like
sulfites?
sulfites
I remember I made the joke before the cast about I found this great wine. I know it's good because it's from far away. It's called Yellowtail, and I think you said So
yeah, you said it's literally poison.
Yeah,
what do you mean by that?
So, not that this came up in Yellowtail, but I think it was like 6 years ago or 7 years ago, a study came out, and there were 16 wines from California that had detectable levels of arsenic in them.
Oh, that's not great.
And so, so a lot of people, fired back from these wineries saying arsenic is naturally occurring in the soils, yada, yada, yada. It's like, well, yeah, arsenic is occurring in the soils.
I mean,
but
botulism is naturally occurring. It doesn't mean
Right.
it's good for
Everything's
you.
natural.
Right.
Yeah,
Anything that is
The
natural.
bubonic plague
Yeah.
just happened. you know?
Coronavirus
Yeah.
is natural. It doesn't mean you want it.
Yeah. Doesn't mean you put it in your wine.
Is that why the older, like rich wino, like wino type people are out of their goddamn minds because they've been drinking arsenic for like 30, 40 years? Because I've seen some of those couples come into the
One
bar
factor.
and they're just like, it's, they're like, you could tell there's a theme song going on in their head throughout their day.
They came in nuts, and then you put the arsenic on top of that.
Yeah.
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 So the thing about the arsenic is that it was actually added to the wine. The winemakers were adding it to the wine, and I searched the internet. It took me forever to find out why anyone would add arsenic to wine.
Shiny?
It was to make it shiny.
Are you serious?
Wait,
Yeah.
really?
The Romans used to cover their debased currency when they reprint their coins. They'd like put less metal in it so they could print more, like old school ancient
Right.
world inflation, and they would coat them in arsenic so they'd be shiny. So you'd think, yeah, it's silver, but it was only like 20% silver, and then you were just handling arsenic coins all day.
Yeah, so that's what it did. It gave it a sheen.
So was there a
Cool.
pushback against that? Did they were they required to not do that, or socially pressured to not do that?
They were socially pressured to not do that.
Wow. And you said it was a pretty or a fairly large percentage of wineries that were doing it.
There were 16 bottles that were tested and had arsenic detected in them, and their response was arsenic is naturally occurring, blah 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 blah. And the pushback from the wine community was, well, if arsenic is naturally occurring, why is it only showing up in your wines?
Right. Yeah,
So,
at unhealthy detectable levels. That
Yeah.
actually, I wanted to ask I don't know if it's in connection to that at all, because this is another thing that I always see and I've always wondered and I have no idea about, which is are sulfites. Good, bad, ugly, because I see
Clint Eastwood.
it says contain sulfites. Some bottles say don't contain sulfites. So it seems as if there's something to either
Or say no added sulfite, so I guess it's just naturally occurring ones. But like,
that's what I
how
mean.
many is that?
Is it
Did a
another
lawyer
arsenic?
write it? Did they write it? Like,
Is it a marketing thing? Is it another arsenic situation?
This one does say contains sulfite.
Yeah, what's
That's
going?
another one.
There are a certain amount of sulfites I want. What's going on with sulfites? What's up with that?
So the level of sulfur that's in dried fruit jams and like orange juice is far higher than any level of sulfur that's in your wine. So when people claim to have a sulfur allergy, the first question out of my mouth is like, "Oh, do you eat jelly?"
you're like, oh, I just want to change the conversation topic. Do you like peanut butter and jelly? And they're like, oh, I love it. It's my favorite sandwich. It's like, you're bullshit.
Wait, so my orange juice contains sulfites?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. So I'm good.
you're good.
Or you're
So-
really bad.
Yeah, or I'm dying from orange juice. Okay.
Or is it like how they say bananas are radioactive, but you're fine living around bananas? So it's like fine.
yeah,
have
why-
sulfites
I
in your
think
food?
didn't we have a cast where we looked it up and you had to eat over 500 bananas like in a day or in an hour to actually like have a appreciable radiation dose?
That sounds
It's
about
Well, no, I
something-
think-
it's something more than the amount of bananas you'll ever be around, hopefully.
What if you're
Right.
on a ship full of bananas?
A barge
You
of bananas?
and you fall down into the.
No, it's just
banana hole,
alliteration, a barge of
and
have
you're
to
just
eat your
laying.
way out.
Yeah, and you're laying in like literally tons of bananas.
Then
That's
maybe your
probably-
chance of cancer goes up by like point
Oh my god! Is that how you make the yellow
0.0001%.
Hulk?
Would you
I bet
eat?
that's how you make
Oh
yellow
my
Hulk.
God.
You would have to eat the peels also.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
You just got to be the banana, man. Wait, so why do they say on it whether or not it contains sulfites then on the wine? Why do they?
I don't know. Some people,
Is that not a legal thing they have to put on there?
yeah, they have to put it on there, and I don't know why.
Oh,
Because it's not harmful. But there's a very small percentage of people who are allergic to sulfites or to sulfur, and they know that though. Like they're like, no, I don't eat dried apricots. They're like, no.
Yeah,
I
when
don't.
you ask them
I-
the peanut butter and jelly thing, they're like, oh, hell no, I've never touched jelly. Like,
Yeah, they're like, oh no, I don't. I can't have raisins.
oh, so it's almost the equivalent of saying may contain or contains like
processed in the same
Right.
factory as tree nuts and peanuts. And
it's a
you know,
disclaimer
whatever.
like that essentially.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Thunk Tank podcast. Hope you enjoyed it.
If you want to help us out, please consider leaving a rating or a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share it with people you think might like it. And if you really want to support us, you can go over to patreon.com/ThunkTankPodcast. We have links to this in the episode description and other places. And for as little as $1 an episode, you can help us keep the lights on. And you also get access to a very special Drunk Tank feed of episodes. So every few episodes, we'll have a few more beers and record an extra 20 to 30 minutes of extra thunky, silly whateverness. So there's a separate RSS link you can get from there, and if you put that into a podcast player, you'll get your own separate feed of only the Drunk Tanks. I think we have about 6 or 7 of them out already, and more to come. Thanks for listening, and stay funky.